Hello and welcome to Connected episode 298. It's made possible by our sponsors Pingdom, ExpressVPN, and Miro. My name is Stephen Hackett, and it is an even episode, so I am introducing Federico Viticci first.
Hello, I'm back.
Yes, I hope you had a good time off last week. I trust that was good.
I'm back, refreshed and sunburned, so I'm doing okay.
Do you wear sunscreen ever? Okay, now I'm worried.
I do, but I don't think it was good enough, honestly. Like we bought it like at a pharmacy, and I thought that it was super fancy. I think it's kind of not up to standard, I would say.
Okay, you need more SPFs, I think.
That's the problem. Yes.
Right. The higher the number, the better it is. Is that how it works?
That is actually how it works. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I bought it for my tattoos. Like I do care. Yeah, I gotta protect those. Especially the colored ones.
Yep. You don't want those getting sunburned too early. Ever, but definitely early on.
Yeah.
Myke, how are you?
Fine. What's the opposite of sunburn? Because I have that.
Like just being pasty and pale?
In Italy, we would say mozzarella.
There you go. I'm a big mozzarella boy. That's what I am. I'm milky and white. That's me. That is who I am right now.
Do you go outside? Like y'all take walks or anything, Myke?
I've started doing that now.
Okay.
I wasn't for a bit.
Yeah.
Are you still under lockdown?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's relaxed now.
Okay.
I like how you say, oh, wow. Like, oh, wow, look at you on your lockdown. You were in lockdown like a month before us. We were all living our lives.
I just say, oh, wow,
stupidly.
because now we've been out of it, and it feels like we've been out of it for a long time. It's.
Yeah, you ready to go back in?
Don't mention it. I think
it's getting bad here again. It's gonna be,
we will.
Gonna be great.
Yeah, it's bad everywhere, right? Because like it didn't go away. It's still there.
People just got bored of it. Myke, do you want to start us?
Yeah, I wanted to recommend a very good episode of Last Week Tonight by John Oliver, which talks a lot about the systemic racism issue in America, why it exists, which was enlightening, and what the term defunding the police actually means, because that phrase, if you don't know what that means, sounds really weird. It's a peculiar thing. Do we not want the police anymore? Which is a strange thing to hear. But there are a lot of really good reasons for why funding changing of the police force should be done. And I really recommend that people watch this John Oliver episode. If you're in America, you can watch it on YouTube for free. If you're not in America, you can't. But wherever you can get HBO or HBO content, I recommend really giving this one a watch. Like I found it enlightening. It helped me understand some things that I didn't know, and is an incredibly emotionally affecting episode that people should see. So I really recommend it.
Agreed. I watched it on Monday and was just completely captivated, and it was extremely helpful to put some context around the things that we're seeing. I think that show does a good job a lot of the time. I watch it weekly just about when they're on. But this one is if you're not a regular viewer, you need to go check it out. Mm-hmm. Headline, Mac Rumors, Friday, June 5th, 2020.
Oh, I like that. You should do all follow-up items in that exact way.
Uh-huh. It's my news announcer voice.
Yeah, it's good.
Some iPhone 11 users complain of display with odd green tint. We got a gate, boys. Yes.
It's not a gate.
This is not interesting at all. It's not. Look, I understand your issue. I know that it is a mild annoyance for you. Do we have to keep every episode following up on the slight green tint of your iPhone?
It's not just me.
Happening. This is just other people. Like a subset of other people saying that they experience the same thing as you, but there's where's the news? Like
that I'm not alone.
That you're not alone. Does that make you feel better?
Well, now people are talking about this. Yeah. Before, nobody was talking about
why is nobody talking about this?
I can't believe that nobody's talking about it. Yeah.
What's funny about this, and this is something that Marco has said on ATP, is that it's very hard for podcasts to go viral. We've been talking about this for weeks, and then it took someone talking about it on Reddit for it to be a story. Which is funny. I did think, why didn't I blog about this? And then I remembered last time I blogged about an iPhone problem, it exploded in a way that I was extremely uncomfortable with. So now
it wasn't a blog. The blog wasn't the problem.
The YouTube
if you
video.
would have blogged it, it wouldn't have been an issue. But you made a YouTube video.
Yeah. So I'm not doing that
And
again.
also, I don't think what you call Greengate, I don't think it's viral. I haven't seen it on TV. I haven't seen it on like mainstream news. So,
meanwhile, the Hissgate video was on the morning show or whatever.
exactly.
Not the morning show.
So-
That's a fictional TV show in Apple Land, but Good Morning America or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Adina could never get the name correct for the morning show, and she would always call it Good Morning Show.
Yeah.
Every single
Good morning
time.
show.
It was impossible
It's a
to
good
get
morning
to get her to say the name of the show correctly.
Hey, I have that problem.
You have that problem more than anybody I know.
Yeah.
But that's a story for another time.
People may be surprised. I'm going to tell the story now. People may be surprised how often in our Google Doc I have things spelled phonetically, especially sponsor names, because you can't get those wrong.
Well, you can.
Well, I do,
You do.
often, but I don't want to.
I think you did it at a live show.
What did I say?
It was Kubernetes.
Yeah, but no one can say that.
Oh, yeah, that took like...
Well, you know.
Yeah, and like I felt
Kubernetes
like
or
the
something.
eyes of the Mac Stadium people, like on the, they were in the theaters, like I just felt their eyes burning into my heart.
I don't know what took longer, saying Kubernetes or for Jason Snell to flip a coin.
Jason can't flip coins,
Yeah.
so it took him longer for sure.
That's why we rehearse.
Well, we rehearse so we realize he can't flip coins, so then we don't ask him to.
All right, Federico, you want to tell us about we've been incorporated into an AI?
Yes, this is a fun project. So we received a tweet from listener Leon Overwheel, which is actually a very nice name. Says, hey guys, I wanted to share something I've been working on for a few weeks. I trained an AI to generate titles and summaries for episodes of Connected that do not exist. So there's a website called thisepisodedoesnotexist.com, and if you go to that website /connected, specifically for this show, you will be presented with fictional titles of fictional episodes that do not actually exist. So, for example, I just opened this thisepisodedoesnotexist.com /connected. And it says, Connected 28, buried alive under the terms of Dropbox. Myke and Federico discuss Federico's new iPhone case, the updated Files app, and iOS 13. If only Federico could write code like Siri! ! And that's the
Okay.
So
Before we go on, I think we need to explain this a little more before what we're about to do is about 10 minutes of refreshing this page and screaming. So basically, this wonderful listener, Leon, took, I guess, our entire back catalog, right? And fed it in this AI.
Yes.
It's built on top of something called GPT-2, I think, is the AI model.
Yeah.
And then whenever you go to the page that Federico recommends, it will show you one of, I think, 400...
500
because it's
maybe.
not generating it new every time. Like there is a limit to the amount that have been made. 500 have been generated, and you can go there. And the great thing is they are actually persistent, so you can find one that you like, keep the number, and go back to it, and you'll get it again. So it's generated 500 episode titles and descriptions based on real titles and descriptions from episodes of the show.
That's correct.
And it's sublime.
And there's a random episode button that you can click and you take into a new page every single time. So I just clicked it.
Yes, like Connected episode 259, Anime and Game Boy Advance. Game Boy Advance is dead. iPhone and iPad gameplay are shared. Canonical has a new CEO. A conversation about working on the iPad Pro.
Connected 301, Mindset creeps in. Next up are more thoughts on Last.fm's future.
Connected 413, Under the Gun. This week, the aging hosts of Connected remember their first reactions to the iPhone and talk about the value of independent blogging.
Nice. Okay, Connected 115, Emergency VGA.
What?
System 76 catches up on pre-WWDC news, including the disappearance of Connected and Remote Play, as well as a lot of creepy yet soothing whispering.
Connected 242, Game of Screens. This one I really don't understand. This week, producer Neil Raddock and reporter Tristan Thompson discussed who are these people? Discussed the new iPhone 6s Pluses, the new Apple TV app, and photo management in iWork.
Wow,
What?
okay.
Who are these people? Tristan Thompson and Neil Ruddock.
I don't know. I found the best title. Connected 243. This is the title. 1 person, 2 persons, 3 persons, 4 persons, 5 people, 6 people, 7 people, 8 people, 9 people. Here's the description. On the penultimate episode of Connected, the boys talk about photo management, smart home devices, and smartphones. Shocking, right?
That's what we would do with our penultimate episode.
Connected 46. I think the AI went a bit rogue here. A sketch up. This week, the guys take a look at the news this week. Connected one. This is still the description. Connected 194. They belong to the world now. The future of supply chain management. Yeah, this errored out. It's just a bunch of titles.
Connected 21. The sequel trilogy. The boys talk about Apple's range of earbuds, then debate productivity for a while before realizing the irony of it.
Connected 325. Interview with the mentor. Myke was gifted a new television. Federico supported by a great new Reddit account, and Steven continues to improve his iOS 12 review.
You gotta keep making it better, Stephen. So this one, I already found this one yesterday and shared it with these two, but I'll have to say it now because I think it's my favorite one. Connected 91, a life presented as a short video. This week, The Rock tells the story of his accessories. Myke, of course.
Myke, of course.
Of course.
Connected 175, global warming cancels. Global warming armor is dead, baby. Parentheses, except for Steven, who is still carrying around an iPhone 7. Also, reports of interference with Apple TV remote scripts. Okay, and China looming large on the horizon.
Oh dear.
Sure.
Oh dear.
Connected 60, born in bricks. This week, the guys talk about the new iPads and click some fake updates. Then iOS 13.4 is crabby, and updates will be hard to come by.
Connected 89, Call of Duty. This week, Stephen and Myke are joined by Guillermo del Toro to talk about Disney Infinity before discussing Apple's recent environmental push. Guillermo del Toro.
Connected 13, singleton dependency. And it's all one word. This week, Stephen and Myke talk about Twitter and WatchKit. Okay, before being greeted by Federico's plumber.
Oh no!
Oh, nice. Connected 178, Treasure Changer. After Myke reveals the source code for the next iPhone, Stephen and Federico discuss the effect of WWDC on iOS apps and the effect that badly coded APIs have on users.
Wow.
Oh my god. All right, Winter Charm in the Discord just pasted Connected 38, Confessions of a Sociopath. This week, Stephen and Myke talked to Scott Forstall about Forstall taking over Show Me a Pro, recent App Store drama, and what's going on with iOS 13.4.
Confessions of
So this is incredible. This is so good. Leon is the best. This is one of my favorite things that I've seen in a very, very long time. And remember, there are 500 of these.
Connected 131, 30-second politic.
I just saw this one. It's so good.
This week, Stephen and Myke banter about Twitter. You always talk about Twitter, you two. Before
Always.
Myke challenges Stephen to a game of Come Grocery, giving everyone a pick of the statistically significant set of election results. Stephen wins.
Year of
Also,
Steven!
iOS workarounds, better power management, and, well, you get the idea. Wow.
So, chat merged in the Relay FM members Discord has given us an interesting challenge that I would like to get to at some point. That we should actually do one of those episodes.
Oh my!
So just like pick one, and that's the episode, and we just have to work out the episode from that.
That sounds like a really good annual special,
Oh
Yes.
my!
I like that a lot.
which you can hear
boy.
if you are a Relay FM member. I'm making a note of that.
So good. Oh my God, that's so fun.
Oh, I can't.
Connected 177. The title is Multi-Schwab. What? Ah, this is so good. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Man. Okay. Let's take a break, and then we'll get into some news.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This episode of Connected is brought to you by Pingdom from SolarWinds. While you've been listening to this podcast, how would you know if your website had gone down? How would you know if customers couldn't be clicking that buy now button or access your content? You could stumble across it by luck, but that's no good. You need a system, something to tell you that everything is running smoothly on your website. And more importantly, when things aren't running so smoothly, that system is Pingdom. It detects over 13 million outages every month. That's more than 400,000 outages every day. Pingdom helps keep sites you love, including Relay FM, online. It doesn't matter if you're a startup or a Fortune 500 company, you need alerts to any critical website issues. You can customize these alerts so they go to separate people, depending on the severity of the outage, how you get them. Plus, they track and analyze your website's load time so you can see what's affecting user experiences. If you have a site of any size, you need Pingdom. They have a no-fuss approach to getting started. All you have to do is give them your URL, and they just take care of the rest. So go to pingdom.com/relayfm right now for a 14-day free trial with no credit card required. When you sign up, use the code CONNECTED at checkout to get a huge 30% off your first invoice. Our thanks to Pingdom from SolarWinds for the support of this show and Relay FM. There is a new beta version of iOS. It has been renamed to 13.6. This was previously known as 13.5.5, which I found confusing because we're only on 13.5.1, but they're renaming it a little bit.
They can't stop jumping ahead right now. Because as well, so 13.5.5 had a beta 1. So this is iOS 13.6 beta 2, even though there was no beta 1 of 13.6, which is fun. It includes fixes, it includes changes, like you can automatically download iOS app updates now, which is a separate option to automatically installing them. And there's some new stuff in the Health app as well. This really isn't big news. I just wanted to talk about it because I can never remember a time where Apple was releasing betas for an iOS version so close to WWDC.
I think there was maybe at least one precedent. Which version of iOS was it that had the HomePod AirPlay 2 delay stuff? Was it like 12.4 or 11.4? Like there was one of them that came out relatively late in the cycle. And I think it was the one with the HomePod stuff, with the AirPlay 2 stuff, with like the multi-speaker deal.
Oh yeah, it got like just in under the wire, right? That was pretty
It was
close.
announced at the WWDC before, and it came out just in time for the next year's WWDC. So that's the only example I can think of. But I mean, yeah, 13. What really strikes me here is obviously the proximity to WWDC, but also the number, like 13.6. Like that's the sixth iteration of a version of iOS, and I don't think I've ever seen version 0.6 of iOS.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen version 0.5, 0.6 for sure. Like that's news to me, and it shows maybe a couple of things, that maybe there were a lot of bugs to fix, and that also there were a lot of features that maybe were cut and had to come back in time. And also the fact that this feature to install and download updates automatically, it does feel to me like Apple really wants you to always be on the latest version of iOS so they can avoid people, among other things, to avoid people jailbreaking and to make sure that people are always on the latest and, in theory, safest and better performing version of iOS.
That's a good point. The jailbreak thing is a good point. So if you are unfamiliar, jailbreaking is back in a big way right now. in 13.5 something, there's a 0-day exploit which will allow people to jailbreak really easily. It could be that one of the reasons they are going to have another version of 13 is just to close that door if they haven't already, right? Interesting.
Yeah, but so 13.6, I don't know if this will come out in time for WWDC. Maybe it could come out after WWDC. We could have a beta for 13 and a beta for 14. Who knows? I mean, at this point, who knows if we're even going to have a beta of 14 the day of the keynote? Is there even going to be a keynote? So
Zach is telling me in the Discord that 13.5.1 fixed the jailbreak. But nevertheless, I was wondering, is it a surprise that we still don't have any more information about WWDC? We're 12 days away. I was expecting
yes,
we'd have had a little bit more by now.
So a couple of things. Usually you do see that press release, or at least those invitations to the press saying, by the way, it's official, there's going to be a keynote. And it's kind of funny because everybody knows there's going to be a keynote. And there's going to be a keynote and it's going to be 10 a.m. and new member of the press are invited. And so you know that it's official, there's going to be a keynote. Now, it may be that, so I see a couple of things here. Obviously, Apple is running late, and because of everything that's been happening between the lockdown and the protests in the United States, delays would be acceptable. Also, it could be that maybe they are doing something that involves members of the press, but those are discussions being held privately, and they don't have the usual press release going out on the Apple newsroom. That could be a potential thing that's happening. Or maybe there's no keynote. Maybe it's like a pre-recorded video that goes up like a Nintendo Direct, and there's nobody to invite. There's nothing to pre-announce. It's just going to happen. Now, I still think it's going to be kind of awkward. So I still think there must be at some point an announcement of like, what is this WWDC going to entail for developers? Yep. Like, are you going to tell me what I'm supposed to do? Like, starting June 22, like what? I just sit in front of my computer and wait for something to happen? So I think there's going to be an announcement of some kind at some point.
Yeah,
I'm very curious.
So just to clarify, like Apple has said there will be a keynote, but keynote can be anything.
Right, yes.
Like it basically just means, like the phrase keynote, it just means there will be some kind of video presentation. Like I don't know, like me and Jason were talking about this a couple of days ago. I'm not sure if it's going to be like a video like a Nintendo Direct or something they do in the Steve Jobs Theater with socially distanced staff members in the audience. Like I don't know how they're going to do it, right? Like I can't put, every time I think I have an idea, it slips away from my brain, right? Like, oh, they'll do it like they did that Craig Federighi thing about the Magic Keyboard is what I think one day. And then I'm like, well, staff are going back to Apple Park, so they could just do it there, right? Like I can't get my head around what will be the right way to do it. Like probably a mix of all of those things, I guess, but I have no idea.
I've got it. I know what they're going to do.
Okay.
You remember that week that Tim Cook just tweeted pictures of things and then those things went for sale? Maybe it's just a tweet thread.
Okay.
And of course, he'd kind of mess with the threading halfway through and have to restart it, but screenshots.
Yeah.
Like maybe the simplest solution would be there is going to be a keynote and it's going to be streamed live, and it is going to be like the most obvious answer. They're going to use the Steve Jobs Theater, and there's going to be socially distant Apple employees in the audience. And then there's going to be...
That would be my personal preference for what they do.
Yes.
As opposed to like a video.
And then what they would do is that like relatively standard keynote, but with a lot more pre-recorded videos.
Yes, that's what I want, because that will feel the most normal.
So you still have a person on stage or a collection of people on stage, but you do obviously get a lot more pre-recorded stuff.
Yeah, if they do people on stage, I guarantee you that like it will be one person goes left, the other person comes right.
Yeah,
like no one will pass, right? Because it's getting too close to each other.
Yeah.
So like it will be like this revolving like track of people. But I would love to see that. Like, because that's what would make me feel like this is a WWDC. Yeah. Like a bunch of like really heavily produced videos, one after the other, like a Nintendo Direct, is going for weird. I mean, and if that's what they do, it's what they do. I just want the information. But I feel like it will be some stage of some description and some videos of some description. And that's kind of how they'll do it. That feels like a more of a possibility now than it did a little bit ago. So I don't know. But the thing that I was more referring to is like the actual way that WWDC will run for developers. I was thinking we would have gotten a bit more detail on that by now.
Yeah.
But there's been nothing. Probably it will be next week now that they say, but it was just a surprise to me. They could do it however they want to do it. They don't have to do anything. But I just assumed it would have been like more formally announced by now.
Personally speaking, my big question mark right now is, first of all, the timeline of it all. Like, is there going to be a first beta of iOS 14, assuming it's going to be called that, available soon after the keynote? And is Apple forecasting a release date in, I assume in the fall, but are they going to say this is coming out in September or in October? Are they going to give us like, I'm assuming that the timeline will be different this year, especially to accommodate for the iPhones, which in theory, the rumors are saying are coming in later than usual. Does that apply to software as well? So I am obviously, unsurprisingly, very curious about that.
I think the most they will give you is just fall.
In the fall.
Because I don't even think in previous times they've even said it will be out in September. Have they? I can't imagine them being like, oh, it'll come out in September. Like, they will always just say the fall.
So
or later this year.
It'll be the fall, and yeah, who knows?
And then it will be probably whenever it's ready. Because I guarantee you they will have, after last year, a plan in place for phones ready, iOS isn't ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? I mean, they will have that plan in place now anyway because of what happened last year, but like definitely because of this year. Like, those phones surely will be made to also run 13 fine, right? Not necessarily worrying about 14, but we'll have to wait and see. I feel sorry for you, Federico.
You felt, yeah.
With the timeline.
I'll have to figure something out. Yeah. Yeah. Gonna be interesting.
Breaking news, guys.
I also have some. I see your notes, Steven, and I have something to follow up on your real-time follow-up.
Okay, so I just got an email because I'm an iBooks publisher, but they also have a support document. Apple is killing off iBooks Author in favor of Pages. So if people aren't familiar, iBooks Author was announced 2012 or so, a long time ago. Remember that big, like that event in New York they did, like, we're going to make textbooks and make teachers give tools, teachers make them make textbooks. Didn't really go anywhere, but it's been around a long time. I did my book in it. Federico, I think you've worked in it as well. I know David Sparks has. iBooks Author was cool in the sense that you could do a lot of stuff in your books, but it was extremely buggy and slow and just kind of a terrible application. A few years ago, they started adding things to Pages, like EPUB export and not all the cool stuff iBooks Author can do, but a lot of it. And they have now said that iBooks Author will no longer be updated. You soon won't be able to download it anymore. You can continue to use it on 10.15 and earlier. So, I don't know if there'll be support next year for it. And they're building an importer into Pages. So what I'll do at some point is probably take my iBooks Author file and import it into Pages and see what breaks if I need to update that book at some point. Not a surprise, iBooks Author has been slowly decaying and it wasn't in a very healthy state to begin with, but it is officially over for iBooks Author.
Yeah, which makes me very sad because I'm pretty sure that there's still a lot of iBooks Author features that have not found their way to Pages, and for sure not into Pages on iOS and iPadOS. So hopefully we'll see some updates on this front to accommodate for this discontinuation at WWDC.
Yeah, what's the conspiracy theory, right? They're doing it just before WWDC. What's the conspiracy theory about this? There's got to be one.
They don't want this to overtake all the news about new versions of software, which it clearly would.
Yeah, or maybe they just have the next version of Pages is going to have a bunch more things for publishing ebooks, which honestly I would very, very much welcome. The other thing, it's not the only thing they're discontinuing today. Say goodbye to iTunes U. So iTunes U is going to be discontinued at the end of 2021. There's a support document that says June 2020 update. Well, not an update as much as an explanation of what's going to happen.
This is like the worst way to say update. The update is you're dead. Right? Like, oh no.
Apple has been hard at work building the next generation of apps for both teachers and students. So basically the argument is we now offer Classroom, which turns your iPad into a powerful teaching assistant, and we have Schoolwork, which helps teachers save time and maximize each student's potential. And at the end, it says, in addition to Classroom and Schoolwork, which are two separate products, Apple also introduced School Manager, and we now have apps like Pages, Numbers, Keynote, GarageBand, iMovie, Clips, okay, and Swift Playgrounds. Sure, yeah, that makes sense. With this in mind, this is the last sentence. With this in mind, Apple will discontinue iTunes U at the end of 2021. iTunes U will continue to be available to all existing customers through the 2020-2021 educational year. So by the end of next year, iTunes U is gone, which does not surprise me because this hasn't got any meaningful updates in a few years. So they're cleaning, spring cleaning just before WWDC.
Today, Apple settles all family business, it seems. They're taking care of the whole situation. What's next on the chopping block?
That's a good question. Safari reading list? I don't know, honestly. No, I really hope that gets better WWDC.
It's just orange icons, though, right? They both had orange icons. Any orange icon. Pages is going to go. Oh, no. That's unexpected consequences.
Yeah, I think these two make sense. I cannot think of any other utility. No, because Final Cut Remote got an update recently. Clips, they're still doing updates on that. Yeah, I guess these two. Motion and Compressor, those still get updates for the Final Cut.
I opened Motion a couple of weeks ago working on a video. I was like, oh, maybe I'll do some cool motion stuff. This is terrifying. I just closed it and walked away.
There could be something in here about Apple maybe refocusing their education teams. I would imagine there was a bit of an overlap between the iBooks author teams and some of the education teams, because they always spoke about iBooks author being a thing for education, right? That was one of the big parts of it, right? If I'm remembering correctly, that you could make textbooks in it and stuff like that, and that was something that they were really pushing. And considering how learning has changed over the last 3 months, there could be an element here of them kind of repositioning stuff. Be like, all right, we're going to make some advancements on our current products, like Classwork and is it Classroom and Schoolwork? Yeah. Is that are they the names of them? And then saying, and we're going to leave that stuff in the past, and we're going to move forward with these new products, so they stop having to drag along iBooks Author, for example.
So I just want to say that Texas Hold'em outlived both iTunes U and iBooks Author.
Oh, it came back.
Well,
didn't just outlive. It revived. They never did an iBooks Author with new graphics.
Yeah.
I used iBooks Author for my 7 years ago when I did the ebook version of my editorial review.
Yeah.
That was all done back when I used to be a Mac user. It was all done in iBooks Author. I actually kind of loved iBooks Author.
I used it for Aqua and Bondi, say it both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that book. And it's every time I saved it, I was like, is now the time a MacBook Pro catches fire? Because it's so nerve-wracking. We'll put in the show notes as well a link, Bradley Chambers, who's one of the leading sort of Apple education writers, his take on this and what he thinks about it. And I think like iBooks Author, iTunes U going away is probably not a huge surprise. Apple has actually, I think earlier this year or last year, sort of announced that, hey, we're doing iTunes U content into podcasts. They sort of broke off some of the features and moved them into Apple Podcasts. So probably not a huge surprise, but still some changes.
The iBooks Author icon features a fountain pen, so I'll be sad when that goes. I'm sure I used iBooks Author for something at some point, but I never released it. But I'm sure I made a book of my own.
Back when you used to be a book writer.
I actually did start writing a book once. I got like many tens of thousands of words into it and then abandoned it, and I'm so pleased that I did.
You're kidding me, right?
No, I'm not kidding. It was a guide to podcasting.
Oh, I thought it was like
and I'm just so
fiction.
pleased
Okay.
that I never released it, because when I was writing it, I didn't know anything, turns out, compared to what I know now. And there are people that are way better at that kind of stuff than me.
Do you still have a draft of it?
Social distancing selfies. Boys, you want to take some selfies? Because Apple's got a patent on a new... Look, patents, typically, we don't cover them. But this one was interesting and feels like something that if you patent this, it's to be done soon. Right, for this exact thing. Like, so the patent filing talks about allowing you to take pictures of people over the internet, making them appear to be with you. So apparently it would connect people via something like FaceTime. So I would be able to right now call you both up somehow with this social distancing selfie app, which will probably be built into the camera, and I could take a picture and it looked like the two of you were behind me.
I mean, this is just sad, right? We all agree that this is just sad.
It's sad, but this is the world that we're in, and if this is the world that we're in, you know.
To be like, so I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this stuff. Like, they also spill into like the more general topic of entertainment. Like, I see in Italy, some TV networks are doing these programs. Like, there's one starting, I believe, next week or today, maybe, called like Quarantine Diaries, and it's like a documentary about following people inside their houses during the lockdown. And that, like,
there's a show starting here called I think it's called like Lockdown Wedding or something like that. Explain to me, how is that entertainment? It just makes me sad. Like, and they show a trailer with like people crying because they cannot leave the house, like people getting haircuts inside because they cannot go out anymore. Especially now that we are sort of almost kind of past it. Like, is that really entertainment? Like, do you really want to feed me stuff that reminds me of that horrible situation that we had to live through? Jobs have to be done. TV schedules have to be filled.
I mean,
so they're filling
just
them,
do reruns of something. You know? So, yeah, social distance selfies, okay. It just seems very sad to me. Just use FaceTime. I don't understand why.
But how do you take a selfie?
Take a screenshot. Like, it's that.
No, but I want it to look like you're standing over my shoulder, you know?
But it's going to look super fake. Like, I
prefer you to be standing with me, you know, Federico.
Look, I'm all for like actually useful COVID related features like contact tracing, which I'm using now because we have the government app and it's incredible. Like, I'm super happy about that. But this stuff and the entertainment stuff, like, is it really necessary? Like, I get it. It's a neat idea. It just makes me sad to think about it. Yeah, now I can take a socially distant selfie with my mom because I cannot go visit my mom. Like, that's super sad. In theory, I guess they're using like the true depth camera when you take a selfie and they cut out the background and they put you together and maybe they let you choose a scene. That's what
gonna look great.
Exactly. So if you remember, you know, I mean, you take a look at Clips, right? Clips has a feature that uses the true depth sensor and it puts you on top of certain backgrounds, like Tokyo or the Eiffel Tower or something. And they look pretty okay, but obviously they look very much fake. So I don't know how you can make a selfie with another person together that is being done remotely look real. So I guess you just go for extra fake, so like funny backgrounds and that sort of stuff. But at the point, is really a selfie. So that's my argument.
Well, let's take a break. This episode of Connected is brought to you by ExpressVPN. You might think that nobody would want your online data to snoop on you, but when you browse the web without anything to protect your privacy, you risk hackers, ad companies, and more collecting your data. And it does happen to everyday people, which is why I recommend ExpressVPN. It runs in the background of your computer or phone, encrypts your data, and hides your public IP address. You just download the app, click to connect, and you're protected. It's the #1 VPN service by TechRadar, and it uses cutting-edge technology called Trusted Server to make sure there's no logs of what you're doing online. It costs less than $7 a month and comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. I use ExpressVPN just the other day. I had to take my truck into the shop and I wanted to get some work done, but there's no way I'm going to use like the sketchy tire shop's Wi-Fi. The tire shop wasn't sketchy, but their Wi-Fi. You know what I'm saying? You don't get a Wi-Fi you don't know. And so I was on my iPad Pro, clicked on ExpressVPN, and I was off to the races. Protect your online activity today and find out how you can get 3 months free at expressvpn.com/connected. That's expressvpn.com/connected for 3 months free with a 1-year package. Take back your online privacy at expressvpn.com/connected. Our thanks to ExpressVPN for their support of the show and all of Relay FM.
Mark Gurman at Bloomberg is reporting that Apple is planning to unveil the ARM transition at WWDC, with new ARM Mac hardware being available to purchase in 2021. Quote from the article, Apple engineers worried that sticking to Intel's roadmap would delay or derail some future Macs. Inside Apple, tests of new Macs with the ARM-based chips have shown sizable improvements over Intel-powered versions, specifically in graphics performance and apps using artificial intelligence, the people said. Apple's processors are also more power efficient than Intel's, which may mean thinner and lighter Mac laptops in the future. And apparently Apple is working on 3 ARM chips for Macintoshes at the moment.
I have some things to say before we get into this. One, yeah, I'm sure it's better in graphics performance because Apple uses really sad graphics parts. Like the Intel stuff they use, the built-in stuff isn't great. But even on machines with discrete video cards or like better video cards, there's a lot better stuff out there than what Apple's using. NVIDIA, whatever happened there. So it's I'm sure it is better in graphics performance. As far as the other stuff, like apps using AI, like, is that a thing normal people care about? Like, I don't know. I found like the reasons that they would maybe do it that Gurman lists as sort of a weird collection of things.
Yeah, but I guess like this is what are the things that are important to Apple, right?
Sure.
Like artificial intelligence would be,
yes,
for sure. And power efficiency would be for sure. Mm-hmm. So like they're the thing. These are like 2 of the main reasons why they would do it, along with the fact of like they want the control. Yes. Intel's messing things up for them. Like these are just other reasons why it would be beneficial. Like I'm sure that you could end up drawing a thing and saying, "Oh, it's better for AR as well," which like no one on the Mac cares about except for Apple, right? Because it's important to them that these things are being considered because it's what their roadmap looks like, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think this has made a lot of sense to me for a long time, and I'm a big fan of this rumor because, and I say this from sort of like an outsider, right? I don't use a Mac as my primary machine. I use it a couple of times each week to record podcasts, but this really excites me because of 2 reasons. One of them is it fits with the idea of controlling all the primary technologies that you rely on. I'm a big fan of that principle. I try to apply that principle to my own work. And also, it's the kind of idea that if we want to be nostalgic about it, that Steve Jobs used to bring up a lot. The idea of owning the complete set of primary technologies that you depend on. You actually make them yourself, so you have full control over your destiny. That would basically be the argument. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So you don't depend on, it used to be Motorola, now Intel, to actually make chips for you because you make them yourself. And so you are the master of your own destiny and your own timeline, which is a principle and approach that I really like. And secondly, I think this is really exciting because it paints a picture of sort of like a unified Apple platform, but not in a way that a lot of people would suggest. So a lot of people would say, oh, Apple is going down the road of a single Apple OS and a single platform that essentially lets you run iPad apps on the Mac and iPhone apps on the Mac and Mac apps on an iPad. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think, in fact, it's a lot more subtle than that and a lot more clever than that. So if you think about it, why is a big deal that Apple is going to make its own chips? for Macs. And so I think, first of all, we need to reframe how this news is presented. A lot of people just say ARM on the Mac. And I don't think that necessarily paints the right picture for it. So start thinking about it as Apple chips on the Mac. I think that's reframing that could be useful to understand why this is a big deal in terms of if you have Apple chips on the Mac, it means you have consistency, right? With the same chips that run on the iPhone and the iPad. And because of that, with that consistency, to developers, you can tell the following story, the following narrative. Now, with Apple chips on the Mac, you have the same great performance. You have the same, set of APIs. For example, you can access Metal with the same performance and the same set of instructions everywhere. And you have a common set of tools, right, that is consistent everywhere. But then instead of saying we're just going to unify everything and there's going to be a single OS and nothing is really going to be optimized for anything, no, you are going to have separate OSs. So you have macOS, iOS, and iPadOS. And you are gonna have separate apps when you think about it. So you have a macOS app and you have an iPhone app and an iPad app. But then you have things like Catalyst and you have things like SwiftUI. And on the distribution side, you have things like universal apps. So you do have consistency at the very low level, right? You have the same Apple chips and you have the same, for example, cloud services and you have the App Store. But then every single piece of it is optimized for the platform that it runs on. So on the Mac, you have apps that take advantage of the cursor and the windowing system and that sort of stuff. And on iPad, you can use drag and drop and you can use the pencil. And on the iPhone, you have, haptic feedback, for example, and a different form factor and cellular connectivity, all that sort of stuff, and the camera. So I think it makes a lot more sense rather than like this approach, if this is indeed the approach, it completely sidesteps all these arguments that we've seen of, the iPad should run macOS or, it should just be a single Apple operating system that runs everywhere. You do end up, and at the end of it, with a unified app platform because you have, at the lowest level, a consistent experience everywhere based on the same Apple chips and the same cloud services and the same, for example, additions to it, like the neural engine, for example. But then every single piece of the ecosystem is optimized for what it is. So you have iPhone apps that work great on the iPhone and Mac apps that continue to work great on the Mac. And from the outside, as somebody who's so used to the iPhone and the iPad, the idea of more developers will now be able to more quickly and more easily carry over their stuff to the Mac while still be able to optimize for the Mac. That sounds incredible to me. And if on top of that you add the benefits of, performance is going to be so much better, and a MacBook's battery is going to last so much longer, and the thing is going to get thinner over time, and you're not going to have to wait for somebody else to make a chip for you, that sounds very, very good to me. So I just feel like, though, reframing the conversation as this is a massive transition to Apple making the same thing everywhere, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think it makes sense to have at the very, very low level the same foundation, and then each piece of the pie is optimized for its own nature, if that makes sense.
I think it does make a lot of sense. And I think they're already going down that path now. I mean, look at something like SwiftUI, which once it's fully baked, which it's not now, it delivers all of that. I think that's definitely where they're going.
So, yeah, I mean, I am very curious to see what they do here. And I do feel like if this is one of the big announcements for WWDC 2020, this is going to be a big chunk of the keynote, whatever that keynote is going to look like. And I assume an even bigger chunk of the State of the Union, assuming there is going to be a State of the Union.
Yeah.
So.
They have said there's going to be a keynote. They just haven't said what it'll look like. But yeah, it'll definitely dominate the State of the Union and probably a lot of the labs as well. I do want to talk a little bit about what this could look like on the Mac, and not in the sense of what the products may be like, although I think we're going to get to that, but some of the the nitty gritty of a transition. This would be the third CPU transition the Mac has undergone. They've undergone from the classic Mac OS to Mac OS 10. Apple's really good at this, but there's always real questions, and a really important one, and maybe honestly the most important one, is emulating x86 on ARM. So to rewind the clock a bit, when Intel Macs started coming out, there were a bunch of big titles like Microsoft Office and Photoshop, etc., that weren't ready for Intel on day one. And Apple included in Tiger and Leopard software called Rosetta that allowed PowerPC applications to run on those Intel Macs. Now, there was a bit of a performance hit, but it was better than not having Photoshop or not having Microsoft Word until Adobe and Microsoft had those applications ready. In Gruber's piece, which we'll link to in the show notes, he says, well, there hasn't really been any rumor about, what this Rosetta could look like this time around. And he said that if he would to bet right now, he would say there's no x86 emulation on ARM Macs. But I think that they may have to have it for those big projects, right? If you can say, well, I can't buy an ARM Mac because it doesn't run Photoshop yet, that's pretty bad. Even though that Apple's way bigger than it was last time they did this, I don't see how they get away without doing this time around. Yeah,
I don't think there's any way that they're just gonna say this is gonna happen, and these new computers that we're gonna sell that are gonna have these Apple chips in them, they will not run Photoshop in any way unless Adobe supports them when these computers actually go out. That feels very unlikely to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, counterpoint. What if they've spent time identifying the applications that would need to move and have been working with those companies already?
Oh, sure.
What if Microsoft and Adobe already have versions of their apps running?
Well, those are two different things. I would imagine that if you're Microsoft or Adobe and this is coming in 2 weeks, you already know about it. It's not going to be a surprise as your employees watching the live stream at home. But knowing about it and working in advance doesn't mean that it's going to be ready on time. And especially something like Photoshop in particular, where there's so much stuff under the hood they have to move. Look, how long did it take between a demo of Photoshop on the iPad and it finally shipping? And then it shipped without basic features, right? I don't know if... I just don't see them being ready because they've never been ready.
Do they have an ARM version for Windows?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Okay.
But also, you're taking a pretty big bet. If you don't have any backwards compatibility, any emulation layer going, you're taking a pretty big bet on all kinds of apps for all kinds of industries that maybe at the moment offer, maybe you work in I don't know, space engineering, and you have this particular application that runs on the Mac. And now the new Mac comes out, and you want to get the new Mac, but you cannot run that app for your job because they don't have... It comes from this unknown development studio, and they don't have a new version ready, and you cannot emulate that app on your new Mac. And sure...
Not that I am attempting to paint a position here of my own feelings, but just, again, to give another point to that. I would feel like if that was the kind of job you had... you wouldn't buy a new Mac that easily anyway, just maybe. In case.
If it's twice as fast, you may be really tempted to. And some real-time follow-up. There doesn't seem to be a version of Photoshop for Windows on ARM. Okay. It will emulate, the 32-bit version will emulate on top of Windows for ARM, which we're going to talk about in a second. But as of December with this blog post, doesn't seem like it's a thing.
It just feels like, as Apple, are you in the position to say, we're going to do this major transition, we don't care about anything that came before it? Like, can you afford to do that right now?
But what if, again, don't believe this, just saying, what if this was like, you know what, App Store or go home?
Again, are you in a position to do that? Like,
I don't know.
No. I don't think they
the
are.
position is that they are sort of making this comeback with Macs as the machines for creative professionals, this big apology tour that they've been doing for the past year. And we all know that creative professionals, most of them, they rely on tools and apps that don't necessarily come from the App Store and that are not necessarily updated every couple of weeks. And so if you're selling those machines to those people, are you in the position to say, oh, by the way, these new ones, we do love our creative professionals, but we are now imposing all these new rules upon you?
Yeah.
I don't know, it just feels counterintuitive to do that.
But, so again, another point. What if they have no immediate plan of transitioning the professional line?
That's just bad management then.
No, as in, like, what they're saying is, like, we're starting with the consumer line and it's going to be a multiple year transition.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
You know, like...
Yeah, but people run Photoshop and Microsoft Word on MacBook Airs too. People cross those lines in all sorts of places.
And that problem is going to come up eventually. You're still going to have to talk about it at some point. Like, you can say, oh, this is a multi-year deal, which, okay, I can actually see that. But still, as Steven said, like, I'm not a designer, but occasionally I do need to use Photoshop. So what?
I'm just saying, it wouldn't surprise me if Apple had worked with Microsoft and Photoshop already to make sure that they will be in place whenever those products launch. So people continue to have a good experience.
I mean,
right?
You would hope.
That would not surprise me, emulation or no emulation.
I just don't have faith in those companies to get it done. Anyways, let's move on because there's a lot of here. So Gruber also thinks about transition hardware. We've spoken about this before, but the Intel Switch, they had this weird tower that had basically a PC in it that ran Mac OS, and that was your transition hardware. You had to give it back or they would come and take your children. Jason and others have considered that the iPad Pro could be this transition thing, that maybe you can like flash it to run Mac OS somehow. The touchscreen doesn't work, but you have a keyboard and trackpad. I don't know. He doesn't think that would be doable because of RAM limitations. And like, how much RAM is in the new iPad Pro?
6 gigs.
6.
Yeah, like you could run Catalina or whatever's after Catalina on 6. It wouldn't be pretty, but it would do it.
Yeah, but can you imagine the precedent that it sets to see macOS on an iPad? Like, that's just a bad image for Apple, I think. Like, even if it's just a developer thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've come around to thinking it will be a Mac Mini.
Yeah, that's a perfect one. I think you just get the Mini, and it's got just the specs that you need, and then everything else you can use whatever you already own, display, keyboard, and stuff.
Yeah,
because so the reasons I've been thinking Mac Mini is it's the cheapest.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to ship.
Yeah,
it's small.
It's very small.
It's small. It plugs into existing setups that people have or can attain relatively easily. And also, I would expect it is easier and cheaper to change out the internals of a Mac Mini to something that it's built for than a laptop.
Yeah.
Right. The laptops feel more like they are designed to have exactly what's in them and nothing more. And changing any component in one of the laptops seems to, I would assume, be quite a big thing. And I would expect that the Mac Mini maybe has a little bit more room inside of it to play around with.
And it's a machine that you probably won't be able to keep, right? This is a temporary temporary thing. And so a Mac Mini is like, yeah, you're going to send it back and people aren't going to want to keep them as much as...
And I don't want them broken.
Yeah.
Like laptops are easy to break. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking. Like, maybe this is the Mac Mini's time to shine.
So yeah, I would think I'm on board with that too. You know, I was thinking a notebook for a little while, but then all the things you said, like, well, it's more expensive and harder to do. And
see, because everyone will agree that a notebook will be the first consumer product, and I think that then we're just like, oh, a MacBook will be the first ARM Mac. So then we all just think that the transition hardware will be a MacBook, right? But like, The transition hardware will never be on sale, would be the expectation, right? Same as the last time. Like I was just hearing James Thompson describe it on a Mac Power Users episode with you, where it was like a G5 and opened it up and it was just a tiny board inside.
Yep.
Because they just had to have some shell that they could throw it in and ship it to people. And I didn't know this, but James mentioned it, that all the developers that developed with those systems got a free Intel iMac. I didn't know that.
It's cool.
Yeah, nice.
So moving on, Windows support. So with Intel, it was a big deal that you could run Windows, parallel, VMware Fusion, VirtualBox. I remember in the early days, people trying to figure out how to boot Intel Macs into Windows. Then Apple released Boot Camp first as a beta, and then initially a product, and then a product they forgot about. So I guess it'll be on that list of things killed at some point, probably.
Probably this point.
So a lot of this comes from a conversation I had with our friend Stephen Trouton Smith. So thank you for clarifying some things for me. It is easy to talk about. Well, like Windows has Windows on ARM. Like you can buy an ARM-powered PC and it has Windows on it. At this point, though, Windows ARM isn't offered as a standalone product.
Yeah, and they're also changing it, right? Because it's going to be 10x going into the future.
Yeah, eventually,
Isn't even a thing properly yet.
Right.
So, like, Microsoft are already going through their own Windows on an ARM thing. They're not in a place to be caring about putting it on an ARM MacBook, right? They got their own stuff going on.
So you have the fact that it's not a thing you can go buy, right, to install. Even on ARM, most software for Windows, we talked about this with Photoshop a second ago, runs in 32-bit emulation mode on top of Windows for ARM because they don't have 64-bit support for applications for Windows on ARM. So you're talking about emulating or virtualizing, I should say, virtualizing an OS that is then emulating the software it's running. It's like you're several layers down now. So that may not be super awesome.
And that would be horrible, right? Like that would run so badly.
And it limits the usefulness of Windows on ARM. There are some applications that can't do that, or they have big performance hits if they do that. Moving on, Apple would need to add support for running virtual machines on their processors. This got technical with my conversation, and I don't claim to fully understand this, how it works at the chip level, but in short, the A-style chips that Apple is shipping aren't capable of running software and virtualization the way that we think about it now. So that would need to be a change, which of course Apple, to your point, Federico, they have control, so they could change it, but it's a change they would have to make.
Yeah.
So virtual machines, probably no go. And then talking about Boot Camp. Boot Camp doesn't actually solve any of these issues, really. I mean, maybe if it was a product that was useful, you could boot to it, but with the T2 chip and Secure Boot, Apple's already been moving to close off multi-OS booting. So there's a support document in the show notes that talks about Secure Boot. So if you don't have a T2 Mac, you haven't come across this. But you have three options. You have full security, which means the signed OS currently trusted by Apple can run. You have medium security, so any version of a signed OS ever trusted by Apple can run. So that's the one you need to be on for Boot Camp, I believe. And then you have no security. Do not enforce any requirements. Boot whatever you want. And then there's an option to disallow or allow external media booting. So Apple's already building in these systems to the Mac to make it harder to boot from another OS besides Mac OS and external media. So why would they, if you're going to build an ARM Mac, which means the T2 stuff can probably come in board or get better, why would you go through all the work to make this machine boot from other operating systems when Apple's moving in the other direction currently? I don't think that jives with what they've been doing already. So I kind of think that just Windows on Macs is just going to go away. I think it's the end.
Yeah, that time is over. Yep, that's done. That time is done. I would assume there are not a big portion of their user base doing this. I would imagine that it's not massive. That there is definitely some, and our listeners would be disproportionate. So please don't contact me to tell me you do it. Like I know people do it. I know people that do it. But my expectation is Boot Camp is not that high a priority for Apple anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, it was only... I don't know if it was ever a priority. I think it was just something that could happen, so they just went with it. This is not going to be a thing that I could imagine that they would jump through the hoops that have been described here to make work. Like, they would just be like, it just doesn't work anymore. That's it. If you want to keep doing it, stick on Intel for a while. And then eventually, when you want to upgrade, you'll need a PC.
Or buy a PC. That's what they would tell you.
Buy a PC.
Yeah.
So I think this is coming to an end in the ARM era.
Hey, Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
How much did your computer cost?
I don't want to talk about that.
Just as roughly,
a lot.
How much could one spend on a computer like the one that you
didn't buy
own?
a computer, you bought a monument.
How
You happy about that, buddy?
How does it feel to be the owner of a computer like yours right now?
Great.
I think Steve Troughton-Smith put it the best. Would you like to read what Steve Troughton-Smith tweeted?
I think you should read it. I don't want to read it.
That Mac Pro looks like a giant $10,000 coffin of obsolescence right about now.
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. But it's a long time before it's obsolete.
Which I want to talk about.
Yes. But proportional to value to obsolescence is like... It's a very different equation to what it had been in the past. Plus, I would just add an addendum that people like you, like the enthusiast person that bought this, will want one of these ARM Macs.
Oh, yeah. When there's an ARM MacBook, even if it's like the wimpy, like a low-end MacBook, I feel like an obligation to cover it and talk about it. So there'll be one in my house as soon as possible.
I don't think that's the reason you'll buy it, but that's a good reason. The reason is you'll want it. You will want it, which is the same reason that you spent the amount of money you spent on the computer that you now use, is because you are a diehard Mac enthusiast. But there is just a thing of like, it made perfect sense for Apple to build, engineer, release this machine, even though they knew they were moving to ARM.
Yeah.
Right? Because it makes so much sense for it to exist. In fact, really, there is an argument to be made that an ARM transition makes the idea of something like a Mac Pro that has an Intel chip in it even more important in a weird way, because like you should still have that high-end line covered for a long period of time for the space person that Federico was talking about earlier on, right? That like you still have these machines that, because of their cost and time of development, will be around for a long time. But it does make it a little bit more tricky for the person like Stephen who wanted it more than needed it.
Sure. It's all fair.
I don't want to throw you under the bus here. I'm pleased you bought the Mac Pro.
Yeah, me too. And, I'm not too concerned about it being obsolete any sooner because of this. So, again, like looking at how they did it last time, Tiger for Intel launched or was announced in the summer of 2005. The first Intel Mac shipped in January 2006. All Macs were Intel by the summer of 2006. Snow Leopard went Intel only in the fall of 2009. So you had 3 years of the end of Tiger, Leopard, and then Snow Leopard said, hey, no more PowerPC Macs. And I remember...
How long was those Macs or Leopard supported until, though? Did Leopard continue to have a life after Snow Leopard?
Just under security updates.
Right. But like that's the important part, though. Like that's kind of what I'm referring to.
Yeah. So say that the first ARM Mac comes out in 2021, you have OS support till 2023, 2024, and then you get 2 to 3 years of security updates past that, because currently Apple releases security updates for N-2. So right now it's Catalina, Mojave, and High Sierra get security updates. So that's really 5, 6, 7 years of support, depending on which way the pie gets cut. And that's assuming that the ARM transition moves as quickly as the Intel one did, which I think a lot of people wonder that. Again, going back to Gruber's piece, he says,
I think it will move faster. I think it will go quicker.
Well, Gruber's point is we just haven't seen Apple's high-end ARM chips, but they wouldn't be doing this if they couldn't make an iMac Pro or a Mac Pro run with ARM processors. So, if I get 6 or 7 years of software support out of this computer, yeah, like I really would want 10. But 6 or 7 it's not great, but it's not a nightmare. Like, I don't regret buying this thinking that ARM Macs are right around the corner, especially because I think that just like on the Intel Switch, the Power Mac to the Mac Pro was the last one. And I think that will be the case for this too. And I think there could be a case that maybe Apple supports the Xeon machines longer than the other Intel machines because they were so expensive and so high end. I don't know. I think we got to see where that goes, but I'm not super worried about it at this point.
I think though that this transition will bring cooler products, and you will move away from the Mac Pro faster than you would have without
cooler
ARM.
than a Mac Pro. It's full of drives.
The definition of cool is interesting there. But I would expect that you will be more tempted by what Apple could make post-ARM transition than you would have been pre-ARM transition. That's just my feeling on that one.
Yeah, we'll see. The price is obviously a big sticking point, right?
You will sell that to Kyle and then buy an iMac Pro again. That's what's going to happen. You know it, too. You know it.
I cannot. This machine was so expensive.
Okay, this episode 298, recorded in June of 2020. I have said what I have said. Stephen has said what he has said. The history books have been recorded of this conversation. Federico, would you like to enter any statement in before we close the chapter on what has just been stated by me and Stephen?
Oh, he's going to buy a new Mac Pro, whatever that's going to look like as soon as it gets announced, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the new Pro thing is going to be, he's going to buy one. And he's going to sell his existing Mac Pro. We all know it.
Mm-hmm.
This shouldn't even be a conversation. It's just a fact.
Yeah, like just the mere idea of what is currently sitting under your desk proves this entire point.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to live with the feeling of knowing that you're owning a piece of discontinued hardware.
Wait, no, that's not correct. Think of who you're saying it's to. Stephen loves discontinued hardware more than anybody else.
You're not going to be... So let me rephrase. You're not going to be able to live with the feeling that you're not using the latest and greatest Pro computer from Apple.
Yes, that's better.
It was moved from under the desk to the shelf, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. No, I think you're going to sell it, but maybe you're going to keep like parts of it.
Keep the feet and ship it to somebody without any feet on it.
Yeah, they just keep those.
Yeah, and that will be a machine to sell. I would expect those Mac Pros will retain value for quite a while.
I think
So like, it won't be too difficult for you to move, but you will move as soon as something exciting enough comes along.
Especially if Apple doesn't have emulation, right? It's like, I can't run any x86 apps. Somebody will be stuck in a bad spot with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let's. There's more Mac stuff to talk about, but let's take our third break. This episode of Connected is brought to you by Miro. Miro is an online whiteboard that brings teams together. Their infinite canvas is perfect for brainstorming, mock-ups, organizing files, and managing complex projects. And what's cool is they have templates to help you get started. You can host meetings in the same frame as your collaborative whiteboard, which is super handy because it means you can discuss items as you go. Myke, I know you and we've worked remotely our entire career together, and it's actually been hard to find good software to kind of make this happen, right? Like, how many Google Docs do we have that are just ideas strewn in some sort of order?
A billion.
Yeah, Miro is a great solution for this problem. They have over 5 million users, and 80% of the Fortune 100 companies out there use Miro. Those are impressive stats. And Miro can integrate with the programs you already use, like Google Drive, Dropbox, Slack, and more. Start collaborating for free when you sign up for an account at Miro.com/connected. That's Miro.com/connected. Sign up for a free account with unlimited team members. Miro.com/connected. Our thanks to Miro for their support of Connected and all of Relay FM. New iMac. This is a tweet from Sonny Dixon, who has been spot on with some of their reports recently. A new iMac is incoming at WWDC. iPad Pro design language with Pro Display-like bezels. T2 chip, AMD Navi GPU, and no more Fusion Drive. Sounds pretty good. People complain about the iMac with the bezels and the design. It hasn't been updated since 2012.
And the spinning disc.
And the spinning discs,
still around,
which is ridiculous. And so this would be a modern iMac, inside and out.
Can I just say about the iPad Pro design, quote unquote, this is just Apple's 2020 design language, right? Like the iPhone is apparently going to get those flat edges. The iMac may get, I guess, flat edges. I don't exactly know how it would translate from iPad to iMac, but there are some ways that it could. I think this is just going to be the design language, right? For a bit, it seems like.
I mean, I wouldn't complain. It's a pretty good design language, especially if they do like,
yes.
Imagine iPhone, iPad Pro, and iMac all with the same like flat edges and stuff. Like that would look lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even an iMac person, but that would look fantastic, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They could do an Apple Watch like that, honestly. No, I'm kidding, but it's kind of fun to...
No, they could. There's no reason why they couldn't.
You just jab your wrist anytime you bend your arm.
Yeah.
Watches have sharp edges.
So there seems to be some smoke here. iMac ship dates are slipping. That's according to 9 to 5 Mac, especially the 27-inch model, which like, does make me worry. Like, are they going to leave the 21 as terrible and old? But who knows?
Wasn't there a rumor of like a 23?
Yeah.
Or like there was like some rumor.
Yeah, moving it to 23 and
size.
27, I think, or 23 and 29. I don't remember, but making it a little bit bigger. That I don't know if last time you guys sat down at a 21-inch display. Oh, Federico, you are right now. You have an LG 4K. It's not the biggest thing in the world. A lot of people want something bigger, I think. I want something bigger. I like my 27-inch display.
Well, you want bigger than that?
I don't know. You know, I haven't looked at a Pro Display XDR outside of Apple's hands-on thing at WWDC last year, but I know John Siracusa talked about it, how like it's 32 inches, right? You have to really like move your head to see everything, and that could be weird, maybe. But I like 27. 27's great.
According to the China Times, spotted by Mac Otakara, 23-inch iMac rumored to launch in the second half of 2020. So that would be that, right? Because if you take the 21-inch iMac and reduce the bezels, maybe you get close to 23 anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that could be how you end up with that screen size. So I have a question.
Yeah, like they did the 16-inch MacBook Pro,
Yeah.
kind of.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Intel or ARM?
I think...
So I just want to say, like, you can show it off at WWDC, but it could come December, January, like they've done in the past. The Mac Pro was shown off this way. The iMac Pro was shown off this way. Like, it is not out of the ordinary for Apple to also, as well as say, like, we have this computer, it's available now, say we have this computer, it's available later. Like, it would be, you know, I can, there are multiple schools of thought on this, right? That you can say, well, you wouldn't want to show that you're moving away from Intel and then say, buy this new expensive computer. It has an Intel chip in it. But you can also say, well, you want a product that people will still want to buy because people won't want to buy Intel Macs anyway, like, or will want to buy them less. So if you have a cool Intel Mac that you're also putting on sale, maybe that will continue some Mac sales going, is even though people are ready to move. I actually don't know how I feel about that, but I could still imagine this being like, oh, and this is going to be the first computer that people buy, and it's an ARM iMac.
Maybe. And again, like, stop. Forgive me for going back to this but this is what they've done before, right? Those first Intel machines, there was an iMac and a MacBook Pro. But the iMac G5 got a redesign late in 2005, like 3 months, I think, before the Intel one came out. It was the iMac G5 with iSight, and the Intel iMac looked just like it. It's like there were some people I think I'm sure were upset that they bought an iMac G5 with a camera in it, and then it got way better 3 months later. But it could be that we see this iMac pretty soon, and then it moves to ARM later. And it's like, hey, it's the same iMac. I mean, in the past when they've done this, Most of the Macs look pretty much the same. The only difference is the iBook went to the MacBook, which is drastically different. So I could see this falling on the Intel side of things pretty easily.
What about biometrics?
Like Face ID? Yeah.
Face ID, Touch ID. Like, could you imagine anything in this computer that would be more than this? Or do you think they may want to just continue to double down on the Apple Watch as the biometric unlocking option for desktop Macs?
I mean, Face ID would make sense, right? You're sitting in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be pretty sweet. And I think the Apple Watch, the authentication system, it works okay. It's pretty nice, actually. But it requires you to have an Apple Watch. So I do think they could do, especially because they have the T2 stuff going, they could do Face ID. And it would be like, when you think about it, like the ideal form factor, because you're sitting right in front of it. So it's looking straight at you. And on the Mac, you wouldn't even have, you wouldn't necessarily have the same constraints space-wise as an iPhone in terms of like fitting the sensor in a tiny, housing. So it will make a lot of sense, I think. Touch ID, you're going to have Touch ID where? In a wireless keyboard or like at the side of the iMac, like you just press your finger to the side of the computer because there's a fingerprint reader there. I think the most obvious place would be the power button of a wireless keyboard. But I think we talked about this before, that the difficulties of having biometrics in a wireless keyboard that needs to talk over Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. We don't know if that's possible yet.
Well, but both the Apple Watch and the phone are doing biometric authentication and sending that to the Mac for different things.
For different things. Yeah, the Apple Watch is basically its own computer. So, like what you need, the Apple Watch also, you need to unlock it when you put it on. And a Magic Keyboard, why you would unlock the Magic Keyboard so that it authenticates you and then you can use Touch ID? I don't know.
Well, Touch ID would be the unlocking of the keyboard, but I think it's too much for a keyboard to put enough of the chips inside of it that it could do the authentication.
So Face ID will make the most sense.
Yeah, and they could have that as a big pitch to why our Macs are better. Oh, we can do this now. Like maybe they could have done it before with the T2, but they may make a big deal of it.
Right.
As this is a feature of ARM Macs. And keep Touch ID on the notebooks. I think Touch ID on laptops is great. It's on the keyboard. Your hands are already there. The lid's really thin. But like the iMac has got room in there. The Pro Display definitely has room in there. So I could see this playing out that way as you've always wanted this, and if you want it, you got to upgrade.
You mentioned the Pro Display. What about a non-Pro Display?
A Pro Display non-XDR. I would like that. I've got the LG 5K and I'm happy with it, but I think a lot of people would like an Apple branded 5K, 27-inch display. It's a really good size, and having the features of the Pro Display aren't important to a lot of people. I don't need a bajillion nits of brightness for extended dynamic range color monitoring, right? Like I don't need that. And I don't want to pay for it, which is why I have an LG 5K. But having something that looked like it using this new design language, which I agree with y'all, is really nice. But just like an iMac without the guts, just turned into a display, that'd be fantastic. And they haven't done it. And I think they've probably heard from a lot of Mac Pro and Mac Mini users, even notebook users who use it in clamshell mode, that they want an Apple display that is not what the Pro Display XDR is. And so maybe that could be based on this design as well. So I think that does it this week. Next week, we will be doing our annual Rickies, our picks for WWDC. So be prepared for that. We're looking forward to that. It's kind of weird that this week is probably when WWDC would be, maybe last week. And so I feel like my idea of what summer is off a little bit, but I'll be glad to get into some WWDC stuff with you guys in the next several weeks. I'm excited. I am excited.
I can tell.
Yeah, let's go. Dub.
Okay. Too much?
I mean, I hit my desk earlier and said we have a gate, so I had some caffeine. It's very exciting.
Now he's back with the ASMR stuff.
If you want to find links to stuff we spoke about, head on over to the website, relay.fm/connected/298. While you're there, there's a lot of fun activities. You can check out those links. Go visit the websites we spoke about. Definitely go check out that John Oliver video. But you can also do some other things. You can send me an email with feedback or follow-up. If it's mean, I just send it to Myke to deal with. But if it's nice, I keep it for myself because I like a little sunshine in my day.
If Steven sends me mean feedback, I will just archive it.
If you want to join Relay FM to support Connected directly, you can do that as well on that page. If you were on Twitter and you want to get in touch there, we're there. We're hanging out. You can find Myke there as IMYKE. You can find Myke's work all over Relay FM, a bunch of shows. I would say if you haven't checked out The Test Drivers, I'm really enjoying it. So go check that out with Austin Evans. That's a show that is in the top of my queue when it comes out. Yeah, I really like Austin. You're okay, but Austin's pretty cool.
Austin's the real winner.
If you want to find Federico online, he is at Viticci, Viticci. He is the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net. I'm sure you guys have a lot planned for WWDC.
Yep.
But you just, no, you're not going to do anything?
No, we do. I said,
do?
yeah.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Good. That's good. I'm glad John's doing it, right? John's going to be busy.
It's not like I'm doing nothing. I'm overseeing.
Oh, yeah, the management, yeah. Mm-hmm. You're the president of Mac Stories.
Yes.
You just did this big thing about OmniFocus that people should go read. We'll put that in the show notes for people to check out. It's great. I mean, you could do it, probably with Remember the Milk or whatever, but it's cool.
Sure. I mean, you actually can do custom views in Remember the Milk, but I don't think you can do. I don't think you can do the custom icons for those views.
Your perspective stuff is really interesting, and it has me rethinking everything. Mm-hmm. So thanks for that.
What are you on right now? What are you going to switch from into?
I'm into Doist.
Yeah. You're into Doist? Okay.
Always come back to it.
He talks. He does all this big talk about Remember the Milk. He hasn't used the thing in
Never
years.
uses it.
I don't know why. Are you like part of an affiliate program or something that you keep bringing it up? Like, why would you?
Are you taking money from Big Milk?
The Big Milk industry?
I can't drink real milk, so I got involved with a software company with milk in their name.
You got fake milk only.
You can find me on Twitter as ISMH and my writing at 512pixels.net. I just did a video about the white iPhone 4 because the iPhone 4 turned 10 years old this past weekend, and it was fun to talk about the really weird story of a phone that barely made it out the door. So go watch that if you haven't watched it. I think our sponsors this week, Pingdom, ExpressVPN, and Miro. And until next week, the week of the Rickies, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Cheerio.
Love you. Bye.